Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report Spotlight. Today we have a returning guest, Robert David Steele. Robert was recommended for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2017. Robert is a former Marine, CIA case officer, and co-founder of the U.S. Marine Corps Intelligence Activity. Robert's mission has been to spread the use of open source intelligence. Robert has written books on OSINT for NATO, the DIA, and U.S. Special Operation Forces. Robert is the creator and owner of RobertDavidSteele.com. You can also find his work on his YouTube channel, and you can find all his other websites on RobertDavidSteele.com. Robert, welcome back to the X22 Report Spotlight.
Hey, it's great to be back with you, and congratulations on over 500,000 views on that interview.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe that our interview, went that high, but that is completely incredible. I wanted to start off with this question, and I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about this. Do you think Trump has now taken control over the deep state? Do you think he's in control and the Patriots are in control?
The short answer is no. There is just too much going on out there that he can't control. And that includes where all the gold is. That includes secret side deals between the Rothschilds, the Vatican, Netanyahu, and other stuff. So there's this huge complex. Now, I've done a book review essay. I've reviewed about 7 books on Donald Trump and the White House. And what I've really learned is that Trump thrives on chaos. And if there isn't enough chaos, he creates it, certain that the other guy is going to fold or weaken. So even though the short answer is no, the long answer is the president has made extraordinary progress, not only on the economic front for the little guy, but in pushing back the deep state. I mean, I think most of these sealed indictments will not be opened. They're there to neutralize people. But as best I can tell, he's about to roll out a gold-backed or a precious metals-backed dollar. So it might be gold and silver. He is virtually nationalized the Federal Reserve already. He's basically got them to where they're not going to raise interest rates even if they want to. I believe that he's recovered a lot of money. And I have been told by a source that I absolutely trust that sometime in the next 3 or 4 weeks, with this global currency reset, in addition to the gold-backed dollar, $1 trillion is going to be put into the U.S. economy from the bottom up. And I might be the beneficiary of that because I've been adopted, and a truth channel is supposed to be funded as part of this. I have no direct knowledge, but all of the indicators that I'm looking at are saying that the American economy is going to get stronger. The president is going to end our elective wars and bring our military home. And there is going to be a lot of innovation to include, and this has already been published, the president has ordered a number, maybe most, of the 6,000 secrecy orders on patents to be taken away. So stuff that the national security community has locked up and not allowed out into the economy, I think it's going to come out. So bottom line is, no, he's not in complete control, but he is doing better than anybody could have possibly done, with the caveat that Jared Kushner destroyed his transition. And that's one of the books I've reviewed, Chris Christie's Let Me Finish. The 12 volumes that 140 people prepared for the president to let him take off running were thrown away by Jared Kushner. People need to understand that for selfish reasons, Jared Kushner has basically cut his own father-in-law off at the knees.
Now, I just wanted to go back to the Federal Reserve and the global currency change-up.
Yeah.
Now, you said that Trump has control over the Federal Reserve right now?
He had dinner with, well, here's what I'm seeing. First off, the Federal Reserve is independent, but it's not federal, it's not a reserve, it's not controlled by the federal government. The president has the authority to nominate and appoint a number of people, including the top guy in the Federal Reserve and some others. What I have seen happening is the president has made it clear to the president of the Federal Reserve that he is looking at being nationalized. We're talking about rescinding the 16th Amendment and reversing the law that created the Federal Reserve. There's also discussion of going past tax reform on a very bad tax process, because the tax process is used by Congress as a toll booth. Congress basically creates tax clauses that people then bribe them to take away. Okay? So I think the 16th Amendment is basically being looked at very closely. And what the Federal Reserve has not done is raised interest rates. If the Federal Reserve raises interest rates, it breaks the U.S. Also, Catherine Austin Fitts has said very clearly the Federal Reserve is bankrupt, literally bankrupt. Okay? So what's going on here is there's some negotiations going on in which the president and his economic team, which is no longer controlled by Goldman Sachs, I think Steve Mnuchin, Skull and Bones Steve Mnuchin, is on very thin ice right now. The president is controlling this, and he's shaping the narrative. And one of the reasons he's being successful is because Wall Street and the Federal Reserve both understand that there is going to be a massive economic bust unless they go along with the president. The original plan was to have the bust, profit from it the way they profited from the Great Depression, blame it all on Trump, and then have a Democrat win in 2020. I think now they understand that Trump is going to win in 2020. Watching the State of the Union last night and looking at Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren and these others, I could see it in their faces. They were all thinking, oh shit, why should I run at all?
Yeah, I agree. When I saw all their faces and what they were doing, they look very nervous, and their facial expression really just told it all.
You're right. And Chuck Schumer, too.
Yes.
I could feel Chuck twitching when Trump did the abortion thing, the full-term abortion thing on him. Chuck Schumer's an agent of a foreign power, okay? He represents Israel, not the United States of America. And what is happening now is people are starting to realize that our Congress is completely corrupt and that President Trump, for all of his flaws, is the one honest guy who is anti-empire and trying to bring business back and income back to the communities across America. I give Trump high marks for what he said. I'm disappointed by what he did not say, but I'm holding out for the 15th of February. I want a government shutdown, a national emergency, and some major declarations by Trump on the 15th of February.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in just a minute, but I just wanted to finish up with the Federal Reserve and the control over the Federal Reserve and this reset that we're talking about. And you said something about a gold-back system. Now, is Trump going to get rid of the Federal Reserve note? Is this going to be something where we take it over and the Treasury actually coins the money? Or
I honestly have no direct access, but I sent you the post on Trump's gold-backed dollar lady, Judy. He has one of his top advisors is the foremost expert in the United States on the gold-backed dollar. And she would not be working for Trump if he were not planning to bring out a gold-backed dollar. That's an assumption on my part. There are people like Ellen Brown, who's this wonderful human being that espouses public banking and community banking, who think that we should keep the current currency. I'm not an expert on currency. My sense is that there will be a one-year period in which existing dollars can be traded in. Now, the other thing that does is it wipes out all the money laundering. This is what India did. All of the cash that Pakistan had to pay for terrorism and so forth, India made it irrelevant overnight. So if Trump changes the currency and provides a one-year, one-to-one turn-in ratio, it guts the people that are sitting on billions of dollars worth of cash. And there's a lot of cash out there. New York City is running on suitcases of cash.
Now, you sent me something where you said there might be two different versions of the plan, a lion version and a lame version. What do you mean by these two different versions, lion and lame?
Well, there's always three versions, but what I was told was that two versions of the State of the Union were prepared for Trump. And I think whoever prepared the one that he delivered was gifted. There were some really wonderful turns of phrase in there, including alliteration. I was glued to the TV, and I was especially appreciative of the chance to see the faces of the people who were reacting to the president's remarks. That really made it worth doing in the Capitol. I had originally said he should refuse that invitation and go deliver it out in Kansas, in the middle of America, to the public. What I was told was that there were two versions. There was a lame version or a lamb version that would not raise too many feathers. And then there was a lion version in which he basically issued ultimatums and said, this is what I'm going to do if you don't get with the program. And according to the news reports, I have no special access at this point, he took the lamb version and spiced it up, so he ended up being between the two. But I think 15 February is the marker day. On the 15th of February, if Congress has not given him $5.7 billion with explicit approval for the construction of barriers, then he's going to declare a national emergency. And let me just point out that Congress is wasting so much money. I mean, $5 billion is nothing. This is an ideological fight that Congress is certain to lose.
Now, you mentioned the February 15th date, and we know he took the spotlight off of him, put the spotlight on Congress because they're the ones who have to debate this. Do you think the shutdown was a test case in the beginning? Do you think he was running a test to see how it affected America and who he can get rid of and things like that?
I love that question. I don't have a definitive answer, but I will say that I drew that conclusion because one of the books that I've reviewed recently by Jim and Deborah Fowlers is called Our Towns. He flew a plane for 100,000 miles and talked to people across America. The bottom line out of that book, Our Towns, is nobody gives a shit what's going on in Washington. They literally are making their own life, and there's no partisan divide in these towns. Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Libertarians, they're all working as town people for the town's benefit. They don't have this partisan brouhaha that the mainstream media makes so much of. I mean, I'm astonished that the governor of Virginia is being hounded as if he were a criminal for a blackface thing that happened 35 years ago, back when it was okay. Today, it's not okay. Back then, it was okay. Get over it. Enough already, as they like to say in New York. So I think he tested it. I think he found out that it was working, but I also think he knew immediately that the Super Bowl was a game changer and that he had to put the airports back in business for the Super Bowl. So it was the Super Bowl that caused him to cut the shutdown short. Also, he made it to the 30-day mark, which authorizes him to begin a reduction in force of the U.S. government. So my best guess is that if Congress does not give the president $5.7 million, they are looking at a 30-day or a 31-day shutdown, which will be followed by a reduction in force. But the president will very wisely make provision in a more publicized manner, as he did with Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel basically told the government workers, I'll cover your paychecks. You can borrow money at no interest. It's guaranteed by the U.S. government. I mean, they've said we're going to pay them when they come back. So I think you're right. He used it as a testing thing. I think we will have another shutdown. I think we will have a reduction in force. I think the senior executive service and the Democratic Party and the Republicans in name only, as well as Wall Street, are all on the back foot. The president is pushing aggressively, and I think he's winning.
So this would be a massive swamp draining if he goes ahead with the RIFs.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Particularly if he announces a gold-backed dollar and he announces the virtual nationalization of the Federal Reserve. If he sponsors, as Ellen Brown has recommended, he could sponsor a whole bunch of community banks, community credit unions like they have in North Dakota, okay, where the community is creating its own currency and its own credit. We don't need to be borrowing from banks. In fact, we should not be putting our money into the stock market, which is Russian roulette. The individual investor always loses because the banks basically sell down.
Do you think with this global reset, do you think he's working with Xi Jinping and Putin in coordination to reset?
I love that question. Yes, with absolute certainty. I'm published at the Russian International Affairs Council, and I talk with the Director General of the Russian International Affairs Council regularly. I'm also in touch with a couple of senior people, one of whom talks to Xi on a weekly basis. What is happening right now is Putin, Xi, and Trump are all having their own individual conversation, which is why Mike Pompeo is kind of irrelevant as Secretary of State. He's kind of on the fringe in relation to this three-part, this triad of Xi Jinping and Putin and Trump. They are talking, and when I was in Thailand, I was talking to very senior people in the government and in the Chinese diaspora. I anticipate that the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which includes the Philippines, will nationalize its central bank sometime in the next year and a half. Okay, so there is this coordinated movement against central banks, which are not public institutions. Okay, they are private institutions. They represent the Queen of England, the Rothschilds, the Vatican, and I have to say it, the Chabad supremacist cult, not good Jews. We have 9 million wonderful good Jews in the United States. The power of Israel, the power of banks is not based on decent Jews that vote. It's based on bribery and blackmail and lies. So I think that Trump, Xi Jinping, and Putin are in fact running a grand strategy against the deep state. And that's one of the reasons why Trump is going to be vastly more successful than the deep state and the Democratic Party ever imagined.
Now, we see that Trump is, ending the endless wars, as he says, out in the Middle East, and he wants to bring the troops back. And it looks like he's getting, pushback from the Pentagon and certain deep state individuals that don't want to end these wars.
Well, Congress gets a 5% kickback on every dollar we spend at war.
Now, is the reason he wants to, well, first of all, these are made up wars, but the other thing is he needs to bring the troops and end these because those wars were really to support the petrodollar in the Middle East with, with other countries paying for the oil. So if he ends that, he takes away the central bank, the deep state, all the players, everything that was set up in 71, he takes all that away from them, doesn't he?
He does. I mean, a major part of the troops in the Middle East is because the Zionist state of Israel wants chaos in the Middle East, and so do the Saudis. Now, Hillary Clinton was bribed by the Saudis. Hillary Clinton sold Syria and Yemen to the Saudis for massive contributions to the Clinton Foundation. She also sold Libya to France. The French made massive contributions to the Clinton Foundation in return for Clinton, as Secretary of State, agreeing that France could take down Libya. And France took Libya down because they didn't like the price of oil that Libya was charging. And the United States didn't like Libya because he was about to create the gold-backed dinar, which would become the African currency, which would replace the petrodollar. So I think you're absolutely right. Trump also, if he brings back the troops, he brings back their wallets. He brings back manpower. He makes it possible for the military to more easily put 10,000 people on the border. I wrote a very popular post that talked about how the acting Secretary of State, who is a contractor, this is like putting a fox in charge of the chicken house, the contractor who is the acting Secretary of State and the service chiefs, including Bob Neller, who was a lieutenant with me, now he's Commandant of the Marine Corps, they are slow rolling the president on the border. They don't want to defend the border. It's kind of like spies not wanting to do open source. It's not in their mental framework. Well, border defense happens to be defense. And because of my article, which went to, I think, the president and was circulated in Fox and also in his family, he understood that most of the engineers in the Department of Defense are not in the Army Corps of Engineers. That has 787 uniformed officers. Most of the engineers, most of the bulldozers, most of the equipment is in the combat engineering brigades of the Army, the Air Force, the famous Seabees from World War II, who could go into an island and build an airfield overnight. The Air Force has the Red Horse squadrons. They can go in and build an airfield overnight. They parachute in if they have to. So what Trump has done with this new 3,000, 5,000 troop addition to the border is responded to those of us who were saying, Mr. President, the military is slow rolling you on the border. So bottom line for me, I'm the guy who broke the story on the denuclearization of the Koreas. I got that from a Japanese princess. I published it on the 4th of March in the American Herald Tribune. Everybody said I was a lunatic. Now they know I'm right. Mark my words, we will denuclearize the Middle East next.
So with the border, what is the real reason why Trump wants to build this wall? I mean, why is he pushing it so hard?
It works. Now, let me say that NAFTA, which Bill Clinton pushed through, NAFTA was actually a way to make it easier for the U.S. government to smuggle drugs. It was a way to make it easier for the Bush crime family and the Clinton crime family to smuggle drugs. Texas is wide open, and they want it that way because the entire Texas judiciary and police system has essentially been co-opted by the Bush crime family, and Texas is essentially a porous border, and they want it that way. So what the president is actually doing here is holding the states accountable for undermining the security of the United States of America. California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas particularly are undermining the security of the rest of America. And President Trump, as we found with his election, represents inner America, okay? The flyover states. Those are the ones today that are starting to see creeping gangs and illegal immigration and so forth. And so the president, by wanting to build a wall, is essentially trying to make it possible for the very few people in the Border Patrol to do their job. The Border Patrol is on record. Walls work.
I agree. They do work. I mean, and this is why, as Trump would say, the wealthy people have walls around their house and guards because they work.
You noticed Nancy Pelosi flinch when he said that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about you, Nancy.
I wanted to switch to Mueller and his investigation. Grassley just reported that he believes that Mueller is going to come out with a report in the next month or so. Now, do you think once this report ever comes out, do you think this is going to report on anything about Russian collusion? And if it does come out and it doesn't really say much, what happens next?
I have come out recently calling for Mueller to be investigated and indicted for 3,000 counts of obstruction of justice and 3,000 counts of complicity and murder after the fact. As director of the FBI, the only thing he did for his entire tenure was cover up 9/11 and protect Dick Cheney. Now, having said that, Mueller is either a very bad guy trying to take Donald Trump down, or he has flipped and he's actually doing other things with this investigation. And my friend Roger Stone and others are being persecuted as cover for action. There is no Russian collusion. I mean, I'm friends with Bill Binney, and I've talked to Julian Assange's number 2 in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. The DNC hack was Seth Miller with a flash drive, okay? And Podesta was hacked by a guy named Gusifer, a Romanian taxi driver, who was actually in jail in Virginia for a while and then turned back to Romania. There was no Russian collusion. And the Russian collusion that is being faked and the Russian hacking of elections that is being faked is being done by CIA using NSA stolen software from Russia that allows to leave Russian fingerprints, even though it's a CIA operation. Okay? So my bottom line is I think Mueller is going to come up empty. He's going to be a pain in the ass. He's going to threaten the Trump children and so forth. But at the end of the day, there's no beef in that sandwich. However, let's assume for the sake of argument that Mueller has made the same flip that Lindsey Graham made. Lindsey Graham is alive today because he flipped, okay? I also believe, by the way, that we got all of the videos and the entire guest list from Epstein, okay, the pedophile, entrapment artist. That's why he got a light sentence, because he gave us everything. And between that and then Binney and I wrote a letter to Jefferson Sessions telling him how to tap into the NSA database to create the networks of all of the white collar criminals, traitors, and elite pedophiles. I think Trump has it all. And so I don't think much is going to come of Mueller's investigation. I don't think he can show collusion. And I'd like to point out that during the election campaign, Trump was more focused on Trump Tower in Moscow than he was on the election. He didn't think he was going to win. He was doing it for his brand. And people who have said, oh, my God, he offered a penthouse to Putin. Well, I've been supporting some real estate deals, and it turns out for big real estate deals, it's customary to include in Seattle and San Francisco to set aside penthouses for key people in the financing and local approval process. This is business, just business. So there may have been mistakes made. The biggest mistakes that were made by people like my friend Roger Stone were obfuscating the truth after the fact, just like Bill Clinton. Got a blowjob that wasn't unconstitutional. He lied about it. That was.
Do you think that whole thing with Roger Stone, do you think that was a production to show that they
that
ran
was
in there and
outrageous.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something called an abusive process. And if I were president, I'd be pulling Mueller up on abusive process, unless, of course, Mueller's my boy and he's just doing stuff. This is theater, okay? Not only, and remember now, Bill Binney, my friend, is a double amputee. The FBI broke into his house and put a gun to Bill Binney's head when my double amputee friend was naked in the shower.
Wow.
Okay? This is outrageous. And one of the things that I'm recommending for those who want to be president in the future is that we demilitarize the police. And we literally cut the FBI down to 30% and start over. The whole system is crazy. Let me tell you, the FBI not only had all those people with guns and CNN queued up and helicopters overhead, they had an amphibious assault unit in the canal behind Stone's house just in case he tried to swim away. I mean, come on. This is at a certain point, the public realizes that the FBI is a joke. I think we've reached that point.
Yeah, I think we have. And CNN, I mean, they did such great investigative reporting. They knew exactly when it was going to happen because they investigated and they just had this great feeling. We all know they were tipped off. I mean,
and these are the same people, to include Fox News, that are covering up 9/11. Okay, everybody knows who did 9/11, and your readers can find in fact, it's still on my desk because I refer to it so often. Okay, this went to the president on the 8th of August. He read it. Okay, and it has a memorandum by Scott Gordon that goes back to 1988. So it's at tinyurl.com/911-POTUS, POTUS. I think we're going to see a major transformation in the federal government. And one of the things that I think Donald Trump is going to do with the shutdown and a RIF and seeing who's not working, as you said, and who's not needed, I would like to see him abolish the Department of Homeland Security, abolish the Internal Revenue Service, cut the secret intelligence community and the FBI by 70%, maybe do some mergers like education and labor, commerce and treasury. We've got all these bureaucratic empires out there, and they're only in the business of spending money. They're not in the business of meeting public needs. And the last comment that I will make to you, and this is what I've been trying very hard to communicate to the White House, is open source everything engineering. This is why I was nominated, but I don't deserve the prize. I want Trump to win the prize. Open source everything engineering costs 10 to 20% of what the existing proprietary, legally burdened, wasteful Western model costs. So when Trump wants to go do infrastructure across America, I'm trying to tell him he can do it for half the price or less if he uses open source everything engineering to include things like hempcrete, okay? Concrete made out of hemp, which is now becoming legalized. Okay, so I think we're on the verge of an innovation revolution and a massive change in the relationship between the federal government and the state. I'm a huge state sovereignty guy. I'm also a huge truth and reconciliation guy. And so I like that Jack Welch quote, which I may not have done on camera with you. Welch walked out of a meeting with Trump. He said, whatever they say about that guy, he's a businessman ready to do business. He's not a politician. That was like talking to a peer. Wow. This is from Jack Welch. Okay. Jack Welch thinks Donald Trump is the cow's bananas. Okay. So this is really good.
I wanted to go back to the beginning when you said something about the indictment, where you don't think a lot of these indictments will be open and people, maybe they will be or won't be arrested. Do you think after the Mueller report comes out, don't you think Trump has the freedom at that point to declassify, to go after and arrest these people? Do you think that he's going to be he might move forward on that because there's no more blocks that he has?
Well, he has the freedom now. I mean, if he declassified the FISA things, one of the things that I'm reading and hearing, and I've got several London contacts, is part of the problem with this whole DNC construct and the Christopher Steele is that the British government was officially behind spying on Donald Trump. Okay, so GCSHQ was monitoring. This goes back years. We used to have an agreement among the Five Eyes where the Americans would spy on Canadian politicians, the British would spy on American politicians, the Canadians would spy on British politicians, and they'd share the take so that they could say with a straight face, we're not spying on our politicians. Now we just go direct. And I believe many of our members of Congress are being blackmailed by NSA and the CIA, as well as the FBI. And one of the things I've proposed to the president is that he create a counterintelligence task force with military retirees and military counterintelligence people, and he make the members of Congress a straight up offer. I will give you a presidential pardon if you will give up every person who's blackmailing you or bribing you. And we take them out. Okay? The reason Trump has not gone after the FISA disclosures is because the British government is shitting in its pants. The only two governments that interfered in the American election were not Russia and China. They were England and Israel. And Israel working through Sheldon Adelson and Tom Steyer and Michael Bloomberg. No, not Tom Steyer, through Sheldon Adelson mostly, and then a few others, okay? So Israel and the United Kingdom are the two governments that sought to interfere in the U.S. election. And the United Kingdom was doing it because Hillary Clinton is bought and paid for by the City of London. Donald Trump is not.
So do you think that he tweeted this out. He even said it to Hillary Clinton many, many times, you should be in jail. Do you think he's going to go down that path where he's going to expose? I don't know.
I'm not the president. I think the president balances things in a much more sophisticated and nuanced way than I might comprehend. Let me say to you that I think that Hillary Clinton will follow John McCain to the grave.
Okay. So where do you think we are going now, and where are we moving forward with Trump's presidency? You mentioned that the banks were planning, and we know this because the mainstream media was out there telling us that in 2020 we're going to have a recession. I mean, they just came out and printed that. And how? I
think he's actually managed to delay that.
Yeah.
They were planning a contrived recession.
Right.
And let me just give a shout out to Wayne Jett and his book, The Fruits of Graft. He's been interviewed by Sarah Westall. It would be great if you chose to interview him and Ellen Brown, and you could even interview Ben Fulford out in Tokyo if you wanted to. The banks contrived the Great Depression. The banks contrived 2008. The banks contrived the recession, depression that we were supposed to have under Donald Trump, and he pushed back and stopped it. Okay, for that alone, he should be reelected. And now he's controlling the Federal Reserve because if the Federal Reserve raises interest rate, it explodes the U.S. government budget, okay, which is already in deep doo-doo. So my bottom line is where I think Trump is going is continuing to fulfill his campaign promises. He's running about a third green, a third yellow, and a third red. And I publish a Trump report card at phi-beta-iota.net by Paul Adams, and we're about to do a new one. But may I say where I don't think he's done enough.
Okay.
I don't think he's done enough to reach out to and empower the 73% that did not vote for him. Okay? Of that 73%, 50% did not vote at all. For the president to be the greatest president ever, he's absolutely got to do three things. Introduce the #unrig Election Integrity Act, because H.R. 1 for the people by Nancy Pelosi is setting the stage for non-citizens to vote.
Yes.
Okay. H.R. 1, the current Election Reform Act, is a fraud, and the president has to stop that. And the best way to stop that is by submitting his own Election Reform Act, which opens Congress to everybody and destroys the two-party tyranny. My vision for Congress in 2020 is 1/3 of Congress is independent or small party, green, libertarian, constitution, whatever. What does that mean? It means neither one of the two-party tyranny can control Congress. They actually have to have evidence-based voting, okay? Because the Election Reform Act would also overturn Citizens United and would eliminate all corporate funding for candidates and would restore the power of people voting over corporate money, okay? So that's number one. Number two, I think he does need to cancel the federal income tax, and he needs to implement the automated payment transaction tax. Now, that does three big things. Number one, it triples the amount of money available as revenue. because it taxes currency and stock transactions, and it also taxes cybercoin, okay, at the transactional level. You can have all the anonymity you want, you're still going to pay taxes, okay? Now, the third thing that it does is it localizes it, because the money is collected at the local level. And we get back to where the states are funding the federal government, not the other way around. Okay, I am huge on overturning the 17th Amendment, which may not have been properly ratified. The senators are supposed to represent the 50 sovereign states of the United States of America. We're the United States of America, not the United Mob of America. Okay? So the president should be moving toward restoring state sovereignty, distributing the government. I'm a huge fan of Nicholas Taleb and his books Anti-Fragility and Skin in the Game. Also, Eleanor Ostrom, Governing the Commons. They all make the point that the only way to survive massive complexity is to localize, to distribute, not centralize, not top down, localize. So I'd like to see the president do that. And the third thing I would like him to do is throw the press out of the White House. That's the most precious real estate on the planet. And I've given you a graphic for each of these. That's the most precious real estate on the planet. The president and the taxpayers should not be supporting scum like Acosta from CNN, who's a rude asshole, okay? The press should be out of the White House. They should be pushed back to the National Press Club. The president can visit the press club on occasion. Sarah Huckabee can answer questions at the press club. And we can also do something that I think would be very valuable. The president can set up a channel for taking in questions by video. And then those questions can come from alternative media as well as mainstream media. And the best questions are distributed not just by the president, but they're answered by assistant secretaries of state, commanders in the field, border patrol people on for. And then the person who asked the question gets a 24-hour embargo, because they asked a good question. They get 24 hours advance on the answer. And then it's posted to a massive public news feed that is the straight truth from the White House. Okay, so I think there's a lot that the president can do with these three initiatives. And I'm hopeful that after the 15th of February, he'll be in a position to start thinking about innovating toward 2020. But he's got a $100 million war chest already. There is no question in my mind that he will not be assassinated, because the Secret Service is not the disloyal, incompetent bunch of clowns that John F. Kennedy had. He will not be assassinated. He will be reelected. There will be a second term. And God bless America for all of that.
Robert, thank you very much for being on the X22 Report Spotlight. I really appreciate it. Once again, how can people see your work?
Just look up Robert David Steele. I have not been funded by a billionaire yet, so I do appreciate donations. PayPal.me/Earth Intel. And every donor gets an email, and I will do a spy improv, answer any question you want to ask if you make a donation.
Fantastic. Once again, thank you very much for being on the Spotlight. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, God bless you. You're one of the top guys I talk to. Thank you.
Thank you very much.